Hello, everybody, and welcome to session number 3 of the Butterfly Project. If you've enjoyed all the content so far, you're starting to see how your ugly caterpillar can quickly transform into a beautiful butterfly as we take you through some of the secrets of really transforming your business into a powerful sales and marketing engine. I'm really excited today because in today's session, we're welcoming John Serrantino from HubSpot. Say hi, John.
Hey, Eric, it's always good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. John and I have worked together for several years, helping businesses really understand the power of what they can do through sales and marketing and using a tool like HubSpot to get it all done. In today's session, we're going to talk about transformation and how to use digital to generate more leads. Now, lots of people tell you, oh, here's the high level theory. But in today's session, John and I really want to give you the granular details on what you can do to literally start enhancing your marketing this month. Let's start our conversation around strategy. If you've ever read some of Sun Tzu's book about strategy, The Art of War, one of the quotes that always strikes me is that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And that really punctuates how important it is to have a strategy before you do anything. In fact, in life, having a strategy for most things would get you a little further along than just winging it. John, when you folks over at HubSpot talk about strategy, how do you kind of encapsulate that?
Eric, first off, I love the quote. At HubSpot, one of the biggest things we think about is getting the plan in place before we start executing. If you start trying to execute without a plan, you're just going to build a lot of technical debt. You're going to build a lot of, basically going to dig a big ditch that you have to dig out of. So for a business, we always point to what is your strategy and then how do we execute within the platform?
So simple and yet so powerful, because I like to use the phrase sometimes of like slow down to go quickly, meaning that slow down, let's have a small conversation about strategy, and then we can really go to market very effectively. So I think that you're right. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today with you guys. In session number 3, the agenda is going to look something like this. We're going to take you through the story of an interesting client called Teal and Team. We're going to give you what goals and objectives this company had when they came to us. We're going to talk about how they pick the right tactics depending upon those goals and objectives. We're going to sprinkle in some metrics so that we can watch what's happening and see everything going up and to the right. We're going to establish the goal line of what they would consider success. And then we're going to tie it all together with a conversation around HubSpot on how we can use that tool to execute the program like this. So let's dive right in. When you're talking about a very powerful story of digital transformation, one of my favorite clients is this Teal and Team. Teal and Team basically is a company located in Austin, Texas, that focuses on 3 specific areas: architecture, building new things, obviously; interior design, right, helping the insides really wow visitors and guests; and then procurement. How do we get all the furniture and equipment we need in order to build out these visions? Prior to meeting us, they were a very traditional company. They had been around for a while, and they were really helping companies in 3 distinct areas: hotels that were redoing their common areas, multifamily apartment buildings that wanted to do the common areas like the lobby or the party rooms, and a concentration in golf clubs that were helping people with the restaurants and all the areas that people would frequent. So when you look at their new website, you can see that it's really on message with what they want to do. It's not about the project. It's all about how you finish on time, on trend, and on budget. And that really sets the tone, using also some great example of their work as a digital or a visual image of what's going on to really give the visitor an understanding of exactly what they can do for you. But to get to this point was a somewhat interesting journey from where they were today, a very traditional firm talking about themselves, to really understanding a good strategy and set of tactics. So let's take you through some of the background of Teal and Team. As I said, national interior design, architecture, and procurement firm. They help apartment complexes, hospitality hotels as an example, and golf clubs enhance their common and public spaces. Most of the leads prior came from referrals because they do fabulous work, or their direct sales force who would be talking to folks who are interested in doing business with them. They were kind of stuck at their current revenue level, still being successful, but not really growing to the level that they wanted to. They were looking to break through to that new plateau with a whole new lead generation channel. And they really didn't have a dedicated internal marketing team. They all kind of pitched in and helped out. So that's where they were when they met us. They started to really describe what they wanted to get out of an engagement. The first thing is that they were very frustrated by the starts and stops they had with inbound leads. People really didn't come to them on a consistent basis. They had to go out and bang on doors and beat the bushes. So the first thing was to really add a consistent inbound lead flow. Then they wanted to create a greater awareness of all of their product lines. Some people knew them for architecture, some people knew them for interior design, and other people just used them for procurement. There was no cross-sell and upsell activity going on there to really expand their footprint inside their clients' businesses. They wanted to create rich content that really spoke to the capabilities and the company's thought leadership. They didn't have any content on their old website. It was a lot about here we are and here's what we do, but people couldn't download stuff and interact with some of their materials to really learn about what Teal and team could do to help them. They wanted to move upstream to sell into the executive level, not just be the regular procurement. They wanted to automate a lot of things because, as we said, they didn't have a full-time marketing and sales team. They really wanted to make technology their friend, e.g. HubSpot. They also wanted to develop some reporting so they could see what's working and what's not. They also wanted a rich pipeline so they wouldn't have to be worried about making their numbers each month. They would have plenty of opportunities to get them to their revenue goals. And because they work in a differentiated space, they really wanted to separate themselves from the other competition. Understanding these goals and objectives was very important because you can build all sorts of sales and marketing programs, but we really want to build one that matches up and gets them all 8 of these goals and objectives that they had. So what we did is then broke this program into 4 basic buckets: strategy, tactics, campaigns, and technology. And the reason we have to put these into buckets because one without all the others isn't going to get to where we want to go. If we have great technology, but we don't know how to use it, what the heck? John, I'll ask you directly. How many times have someone come to you and said, I want to buy this tool, and you ask them, what are you trying to accomplish here? And you heard crickets.
Oh, Eric, more often than you can possibly imagine. I think there's oftentimes this desire to fix through technology, and the reality is technology is a tool. Technology is a tool to implement strategy and planning. So more often than not, to answer your question.
I agree with you. I hear it all the time. People ask us, hey, can you build us a new website? I'm like, great. What do you want it to say? And then I don't hear anything because I didn't think about the big story. Mm-hmm. So let's start with strategy. The first thing you want to do when building a program like this is to really take a look at the competition. Really have to assess what the competitive landscape is. See what other people are saying. See how hard it's going to be to compete against those folks. Are they saying interesting things? Do they have lots of interesting offers? We really have to start there. And you also want to take a look at how they're ranking because you want to see if you're going to be listed number 1 on Google, how hard that's going to be and how much effort it's going to take to get there. At the end of the day, the first thing you want is a really good set of recommendations on how you could beat the pants off the competition. Once you've done that, now let's look for, more internally. Personas, the description of the people we want to do business is the next step you have to go to. We segmented it by their 3 divisions and we asked them very simply, who's your favorite client in each one of these divisions? And as they started to talk and give us the dimensions of those clients, it became very clear the kinds of people they wanted to attract. And when we were done there, we had a reference deck of personas that we could refer to make sure we're always making, saying the right things to attract those kinds of people. Also, strategically, we wanted to talk about the big story. Teal and team had a great story, but it didn't match the outside perception of the rest of the world. So we pulled it out of them, and then we started challenging them to say, well, what if we talked about this, or what if we did that, which were these interesting things that we made the assumption that the personas would want to see. faster turnaround, transparency into budgets and planning, unique recommendations, processes, and systems that would get them their beautiful clubhouse. Those were some of the things we started to talk about. And at the end of the day, we created a really nice story that really was different than the competition. Well, now that we had those messages, we had to then create some content to support that. So we looked at all the content they had, which wasn't too much, and we looked at it in the course of the buyer's journey, finding little gaps where we could use things like white papers and tip sheets, free reports, infographics, blog posts, and videos to really give people the information they needed on their journey, but also more importantly, to answer the questions and concerns they had when looking at Teal and Team. So at the end of the day, we had a rich content strategy. We knew exactly what pieces of content we had to create in order to engage with those prospective buyers. Finally, we took a look at their existing website and we asked them, what would make this better? What do you think the clients want? What's missing? What are things that you'd like to have on the website that would really answer a lot of questions? And we came up with a lot of interactive tools and rich content that people could explore. We also added a couple of new navigation links to give people additional sections where they could see things like before and afters, so people could really start to emotionally connect with the work that Teal and Team did. We also did a little bit of a technical website review. And John, how many times have you reviewed a client's website where they really weren't using technology to drive some of the results that they're looking for?
Yeah, Eric, it's more and more common now, especially as businesses really do look to transform digitally, which I think is why this is such a timely conversation. It's an absence that we're seeing more often than not for these businesses that are trying to transition.
Absolutely. Like we look at a business and they say, yeah, we really want to be very interactive with our clients. We're like, have you considered the HubSpot chat feature? Because everybody likes conversational marketing now. I don't want to wait around for return email. And by implementing chat, immediately we can start to have rich conversations. So, John, good point. So at the end of the day, we not only gave them recommendations on what would make a better website, but we also gave them some technical recommendations so their website would perform better. And then finally, based upon this whole story and some of the imagery and some of the target markets, we mixed it all up in a big stew, and we were able to present them a new reconcepted homepage, which really told their story better, as I showed you earlier. Finally, the last piece of strategy we did is getting in there and opening up the hood to see what we needed to do from an SEO perspective, because there are people out there searching for firms like theirs. We just wanted to make sure that we got their share of the traffic they needed to once again drive new opportunities. Now that the strategy was locked down, we're ready to move on to the tactics. The first thing we wanted to do was implement HubSpot. John, can you give us a little bit of personal experience of before and after? Before someone has HubSpot and after they do a full implementation, what do the results look like?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, if I had to sum it up in a word, is clarity, Eric. So when we think about HubSpot, and we're going to touch on this in a little bit, we really think about a way to mobilize that planning and that strategy that went into place and bring to life those insights. So really clarity is what it's all about when we think about engaging with a platform like HubSpot.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because a lot of people are really into dashboards. And it's not about the dashboards, it's about the insights that you get from the dashboard. So great point, John. Thank you. We also said, well, look, you don't have a sales and marketing team that's full-time dedicated. Let's give you a little bit of training on HubSpot so that you could really understand how to use the tool. And some people could be more of the sales focus and others folks could be working on the marketing tools. So we really wanted to give them some good training to give them a good running start to use their software that they just invested in. Also, we wanted to make sure that they had a nurture strategy. What do I mean by nurture? Well, John, give us an example of when someone downloads a piece of content on a website, what HubSpot can do to really follow up with that person.
Yeah, Eric, I think the first thing to think about is when these folks are downloading things, a lot of times they're not ready to purchase, right? They're exploring. So one of the things HubSpot is able to do is optimize the flow of information to that person to keep them engaged, basically to draw them back in. So from a fundamental technology perspective, what we're able to do, one quick example, is automate email communication to the prospect. Relevant email communication designed to push them down the funnel, let's say. Does that sound about right to you?
Sure. So as a real life example, I download Teal and Team's white paper, 9 critical mistakes, free ebook, 9 critical mistakes to avoid when designing a clubhouse a restaurant. I download that piece of content in exchange for giving my email address, and then automatically I would get a half a dozen emails over the next 3 weeks, continuously building a case why Teal and Team is the one to help you. And John, I forgot, how much does it cost when we send someone an email?
Great question, Eric. So I think an email ranges from free to free.
And I'm pretty sure that fits all of the budgets of our folks listening today.
I'd like to believe so.
Absolutely. So now, continuing down our tactical approach, we took all the recommendations we did and we enhanced their website. We also took our content strategy, identified it, and in this case, we built 6 new pieces of content, some early in the buyer's journey, some in the middle of the buyer's journey, and some at the end of the buyer's journey to once again keep those questions answered and the argument that we're the obvious choice to do business with. So now we're ready to receive leads. We can go on to some campaigns. In this case, we actually had different kinds of buyers: procurement people, interior designers, owners of apartment buildings. So we had to make sure that we had the right kind of campaigns to focus on that. We started with some demand generation, really finding the areas where these targets hang out and putting the Teal and Team story in front of them, teasing them with a few little content pieces that would drive them back to the website. We use lots of different tools. We use social media, we used email marketing, we use some video, and also we use some paid. And what I mean by paid is that we paid campaigns on Google AdWords and LinkedIn and Facebook to really attract the kind of people we wanted. Now, I want to have a quick conversation about paid. People are like, oh no, advertising, that's expensive. And you're right, but only when it's used incorrectly. When used correctly, paid can really start a campaign off for you. It could also give you the insight on what people want to buy and what they don't want to buy. And it can also give you an additional stream of inbound leads that you wouldn't normally have because you're kind of going out and putting your message in front of folks as opposed to waiting for them to find you. So not saying to spend a large amount of money on paid, but mixing it in. And we often call it Tabasco sauce. Nobody drinks a gallon of Tabasco sauce, but they do sprinkle it here and there to give a little flavor, just like we can give a little bit of enhanced performance on this campaign. We also built lots of landing pages through HubSpot, right? We wanted to make sure that when people did click through for some of these campaigns, they landed in a place where they were hearing the story exactly to what they were looking for. And on those landing pages, we got lots of calls to action. Download this, engage with us now, try our, build it yourself program, our calculator, all those things that would start to engage people and establish the fact why Teal and Team is the obvious choice to do business with. And then finally, we had to do some analytics, as John said earlier, to see what was going on, and I'll leave that to him. And we continued to work with Teal and Team after this program was done on a monthly basis to really optimize the program. Looking at the data, understanding those insights, and then doing little things to kind of dial in the results so they were getting that consistent lead flow that was number one on their goals and objectives list. And that's how you put together a program of tactical things in order to really build out a marketing program that'll generate a consistent lead flow. So that's great, Eric, but I need results. A quote by everyone. And that's a really important issue there. So let me show you a little bit of a secret trick that we use at Square 2. It's called a revenue cycle model. What you see in the lighter yellow cone at the top is the current performance of the company. They were getting about 1,500 visitors a month to their website, and they were converting about 2% of them into their database. And the ones that went into their database, about 50% of them could be classified as MQLs or marketing qualified leads. And out of those 15, another half of those were really sales qualified leads. Out of the 7 that were there, 70% of those or so were sales opportunities. And they decided to go down the road with about 4 of them. And then at the end of the day, that accounted about 1 new client per month. Great. Well, when we asked them what success would look like from a metrics perspective, they said, well, 1 is nice, but it would be so great for our firm if we could get to 5 new clients a month. Okay, great. So our team worked backwards to figure out what would we need to do from a metrics perspective in order to get 5 new clients. Well, That would probably take an increase in web traffic. Here we're estimating about 2,500 people a month visiting as opposed to 1,500. So we have our work cut out for her with SEO and paid campaigns and public relations and sharing of content on social to drive more people back to the website. We also gave a very modest increase from a 2% site-wide conversion rate to a 2.5% site-wide conversion rate. Based on that, now we were getting 62 people a month into their database. Out of that, well, let's use the same 50% of those being MQL. So now we got 31. We did a better work on nurturing, as John described earlier. So that increased that MQL to SQL by 60% from 50%. Same 70%, same 90%, but their close rate, because they had a better story, went up slightly as well. And now, based on these stages of the buyer's journey, we were able to generate those 5 clients. Based upon that, we now see the work that we have to do in each one of these areas to get those numbers up. Now, this is very important because if you don't have an understanding of where the goal line is, you don't know where to apply your limited resources to get the best bang for your buck. Here we know we have to do SEO, we have to convert more people, we have to nurture more people, and we have to help our sales effort by closing more people. And by doing those increases in metrics, we get a compounding effect, which is great for getting 5 versus 1 new client per month. I hope that's not too technical, but if you would take the time to do this for your company, you would see where the opportunities lie and where the improvements are to help you guys generate more leads as well. So I've done a lot of the talking today. I'm going to turn it over to my friend John here because technology in today's market is mission critical for getting success. I could do all the things that I told you about over the last few minutes or so, but if I don't have technology, I'm doing it manually and it's taken me forever and I have no insight to what's working and what's not. So John, give us a little bit about the background of how we could apply HubSpot to a campaign like this to get great results.
I love it. Eric, thank you for the lead in. It's really been interesting thinking about the way we frame this conversation of strategy and then really getting into the nitty gritty of how we do this. And I think that's really where HubSpot's going to enter the conversation. So fantastic segue. When we think about HubSpot, first and foremost, we're thinking of a platform designed to maintain and streamline every aspect of your business, from the marketing to attract these visitors that we were talking about, to the sales to manage them through a pipeline, all the way through to the service side to figure out who our most engaged customers are, to get that cross sell, to get that resell volume going, and really create what we call a flywheel effect. So how does that all tie together, Eric? Well, for me, when I think about all of those tactical, strategic things we're doing, I'm really thinking about an orchestra, and I'm really thinking about an orchestra and the way it plays together. Now, you mentioned you could do all these things without HubSpot, and what I want everyone to picture is a bubble around each performer. Just picture a little bubble, a little cone dropping over them. Can you imagine the way the music would sound if it wasn't cohesive and it wasn't blending together? That's the way a lot of businesses operate today. Maybe you're watching this and that's the way your business operates. You have a tool to do email marketing. You have a tool to do maybe paid spend, as Eric mentioned, which sounds like a really dirty term, but you may be doing it, right? The problem is when you have these things coned off and bubbled, you don't see the overall impact and how they tie together. So it'd be a bit of a failed orchestra, wouldn't it? So what we think about when we think about HubSpot is really the ability to tune these things together. And I know we've got a nice slide coming up with a little tuning. There we go. We think about the ability to tune together all of these efforts. Eric, you mentioned something that was really interesting to me when we were thinking about some of those exercises for Teal, where we thought about white papers and identifying personas and sending all those things out. Now, I already know the answer to this, but how did you guys kind of quantify the impact we were having and which persona was better than another and where we were having a positive impact?
Yeah, I mean, it really all stems from the data, right? Because I could assume that this is a great persona I want to target, but if I start looking for procurement or buyers at hotels and they're not responding to my message, I'm off base.
Yeah, and I think the other insight that I see businesses gather over and over again is maybe there was a fallacy in the persona they were targeting. And really where HubSpot comes into play is fine tuning by having you A, craft and configure that persona, B, craft and configure the content that we're going to send out and target that persona with, and then C, measure the efficacy, measure things like conversion rates, So I've seen businesses throw out the window, and I'm sure Eric, in your time, you've seen this. They throw out the window a persona that they thought was fantastic because it's just not resonating. You've seen that, right?
Absolutely. And I wouldn't know it unless I looked at the data.
Yeah, and again, to your point, there's ways to do this in a bubble, and I think you spend a lot of time looking at a lot of spreadsheets. But what we're going to see on the HubSpot side, and I prepared for you guys today a couple of simple, easy to look at slides just to give you a high level overview. So when we think about dashboards and reports, some of this stuff can be mumbo jumbo, right? If you really take it out and look at it and have no context, it's mumbo jumbo because it doesn't coordinate. What I love about HubSpot is when we go left to right here, we have the sessions, so the people visiting our site, the contacts we're deriving from those visits, and then those that are translating over to customers. That's a pretty clear journey, I'd say. What do you think, Eric?
100%. I mean, look, when you understand the dashboard, it becomes evident very quickly.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really interesting here is we want to capture all those sources, right? Where the business is coming from. If you're doing things like paid spend and you don't know what the volume is you're getting from it, you're kind of throwing money down a well, right? I think that works really well initially because you're so excited. Businesses will spend, let's just make up a number and say $1,000 in a month on paid spend. They'll get a new deal from it. They'll look at it and go, oh my goodness, we got a new deal. That's not an infinite bucket. And it's really important for businesses to kind of hone in on that. And what we see within the HubSpot ecosystem, particularly down here when we look at those new marketing qualified leads, is the ability to quantify over time how many leads are coming from a source. So really impactful stuff. Moving down the line, the other aspect that we really focus on the HubSpot side, and we see this over and over again, you can flip over to the social side, is social media. So Eric, you worked with Teal on social. Did you guys see anything interesting there that popped up along the way?
You mean for Teal and Team?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, one of the things was they had a very visual product. So we started to add more visual posts because they were doing text-based posts originally, and they have such beautiful work. And like I said earlier, people love before and afters. They love seeing projects underway. So yes, we really started to lean on social a little bit more because people could quickly emotionally connect with a photo rather than text.
100%. And where HubSpot comes into play there, as you're seeing on screen, is reporting on a couple of things. Number one, your audience growth across platforms. It's really important to keep yourself accountable. Are the things you're doing working, right? Number two, when we think about published posts, I love this one, Eric. This is really, for me, what shows consistency for a business. So if I'm transforming digitally, a lot of times the first thing I do is I set up a Facebook page and I just start throwing stuff out there, right? The problem with that is organically, you're not going to have a very large audience to start off with, so you get discouraged. How often do you see that? A business says, oh, we had a Facebook page, right?
Yes, or the Facebook page that they have hasn't been touched for a while because they gave up, and now it's actually a hindrance, not a help.
But what do those pages look like if you go back that day they set it up? Maybe they had 2 weeks, 14 posts in a row. It's really strong, but they're not getting results, right? Is that fair?
Absolutely.
So we want to do a couple of things at HubSpot. Number one, we want to give you the visibility into that growth. Number two, we want to show you the work you're putting in. I actually look at this report the same way I'd look at a report on maybe physical activity. I think about social as going to the gym. So again, on the HubSpot side, we're giving you the ability to quantify the reps you're putting in at the gym. The other thing we're doing that's not really pictured here is just being the engine to connect to do those posts, just to make it easier on the business. So you're not logging into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn individually. The other thing, Eric, that I think is really, really key and paramount here is thinking about that paid spend that you were alluding to as maybe not such a dirty thing, especially when we think about the reporting within HubSpot. So when we take a look here, we're going to have a dashboard that's going to show paid spend and the reporting on that. We can flip over to the next slide here. Couple of things. So Eric, you talked about this. I think you did a phenomenal job throwing it out there for businesses. Paid spend is relevant, right? It's relevant because if we can target in, we can get conversion. What HubSpot's designed to do is show you the ROI. So if we walk again left to right, we're going to look at how much is getting out there, how much it's getting interacted with, and what it's bringing to the table. I think that's critical for businesses, just because ultimately it could be a well, it could be a big well you throw money down. So those are some key reports that we have on the HubSpot side just to give some visibility there.
Excellent. It's funny because clients that don't have a handle on that cost per click, cost per lead, and cost per client acquisition, sometimes they could literally drive themselves into a negative position because they don't have a handle on what it's costing them to bring those folks in.
Well, and Eric, you maybe see this, but how variable is that cost over time?
Yep, very.
And there's a point where the ROI starts kind of going like that, right?
Exactly, where you then have to find new channels because we just can't to throw money into paid and hope that that's the silver bullet.
Yeah. And again, going back to the theme, HubSpot is really a tool to help enable you to have clarity in your business. I personally worked in businesses where paid spend was a big part of how we attracted leads. And then it slowed, and we didn't know A, why, B, we didn't know the true cost per lead. And that's a scary situation for a business owner, Eric. I mean, is it not?
Absolutely. We look at it like a stock portfolio, right? You would never take your life savings and just put it into one stock. You want to spread it out so that one's up, one's down a little, but collectively they're all going up and to the right. And it's the same thing with marketing tactics. Because of COVID-19, a lot of people got caught really shorthanded because they were only relying on their sales team to go to conferences, have lunch with prospects, and play golf. All of a sudden, that all got taken away from them, and they had no digital lead channel. By adding the channel now, they've had a whole new way for people to find and buy from them. But they were a perfect example of having all their eggs in one basket.
Yeah. It's a difference between art and science, isn't it? When we think about the old way of doing it versus digital. It's a bit
So
more
true. And you can
complicated.
really track everything these days. Everything is quantifiable. So that's really great. Hey guys, that kind of sums up our session today. John and I could talk all day if you let us about marketing and technology, but we wanted to make sure we gave you some highlights on how to build the tactics and check to make sure they're the right ones for you. If you're interested in HubSpot, here's a link that you could use to schedule some time with John to talk about HubSpot and if it's right for you. John, people always think HubSpot's so expensive. Give us a little bit about what it might be to get started.
Yeah, that is a perception. So HubSpot actually starts for free, Eric. That's a pretty good price. Yeah. So one of the things we've done on the HubSpot side is introduce what's called a freemium model. The idea here is that as a business owner, you can dip your toe in, get exposure to the tools, see what might work for you. And then we have plans starting at $50 per month. Again, as Eric mentioned, strategy needs to come first. So while you can dip your toe in, learn a little bit about the tool, I'm certainly happy to take you through it. I think there is tremendous value there. We really got to have a strategy in place in terms of how we're going to want to implement a tool, whether the cost is free or $10,000 a month.
Agreed. We don't want to throw any money away.
Perfect.
Also, because you've sat on this session, you're entitled to some exclusive content. And here we have our interactive revenue modeler. It's a online version of what I showed you as far as that revenue cycle goes. So if you're interested in trying to figure out your own current state and desired state, download this simple little tool and it'll help you see how many leads you're going to need to get to where you want to go. All complimentary with our pleasure. So thanks so much for attending today. I just want to give you a little bit of a taste of what's coming up tomorrow during the Butterfly Project. And that is a really interesting conversation that I'm going to have with Jeff Tull. He is the author of the book, Mastering the Complex Sale. And he's going to give you some really good information that now that you've generated those leads, you can close them. So don't miss, that's going to be a must attend session as far as the Butterfly Project goes. Hey, connect with us online. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can see some of the links there. We're always pushing out information to help you think differently about sales and marketing. Once again, a giant thank you to John Serrantino and the entire staff of HubSpot for supporting not only our firm, but all of our clients to get the results they're looking for. Thanks, John. We really appreciate you joining in today.
Thanks, Eric. Pleasure.
Guys, we'll see you next time. Take care.